What's going on? That was kind of cool. I had never done
That
that
was so
before.
cool.
With the countdown, I just pressed the button. I was like, "Oh, that's sick.
I
That's
love it.
cool." Welcome, everybody, to another week, Founders Focus with the lovely Adrena Blackburn of Summit Chasers Network. I will address it right away. We are changing some things up when it comes to our content and just some of the shows that we are doing. We're changing things up, and we're starting this week, obviously. And I just want to say a big appreciation to Mr. John Duffin for doing the shows with me. And actually, it was kind of the catalyst. Us doing that show together was kind of the catalyst to some of our kind of content strategy that we're doing right now. Authentic and real, off the cuff, content and shows and interactions and connection is really what we love to do. And is I think what a lot of other people like. There's enough fake. There's enough scripted. There's enough mass reach outs and this kind of stuff, right? And very obvious. Just not everything's a highlight reel these days. We want to show the bloopers too, or well, I guess that's not really the point, but we want to be as real as possible, show that we're human, take you along a journey with us. So anyways, I just want to thank John for even getting this party started. So big appreciation to Mr. John Duffin of Duffin Media, and he's actually going to be on the Summit Coffee Club this coming Saturday. We're going to have a lot of fun. We have a fun game plan for him. He's already very nervous, which is always good, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So join us there every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. It's 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We have a lot of fun on that one. It's a little bit less serious, more being an entrepreneur, being a high performer, stressful enough. You don't need to show up to another stuffy webinar that's shoving things down your throat and pitching you at the end. So that one's where we get to come together, celebrate some wins, overcome some challenges together, and have a little bit of fun doing so. Because what's the point of succeeding and sharing it with everybody if it's not fun? So that's where we do that one. But again, starting not next week, but the week after. So really starting in September. Is that the next month? September's the next month, right? Yeah, September. It's flying. So starting next month, things are going to change a little bit. Founders Focus is going to kind of be taking over what Summit Success Series is right now. So Founders Focus is going to be very business, Summit Chaser, foundational business elements focused. We're going to have really cool guests on. We're going to go over some of our frameworks, go through some of the case studies of our clients and other businesses out there, and really drill down kind of how we can create, make success in business simple for you so you can live extraordinary. And that's kind of our catchphrase. And then Thursday, Summit Success Series, that's going to be more holistic, focusing on general success principles, lifestyles, habit forming, personal growth, and personal development. We have some really cool guests lined up for that one. And then I just explained at the Summit Coffee Club, where we just get to have fun, play some games, and let off some steam, overcome some challenges, and celebrate some wins together. And obviously, we have our podcasts that we release every week. So Summit Chasers Podcast. I have a new podcast coming out, a new episode coming out this Thursday with Konstantin Riestel. He is from Germany, AI outreach sales master. He kind of breaks down some misconceptions on using AI in your outreach and sales and that kind of stuff. So that one's really, really, really powerful, I think. Really, really valuable. So I love that episode. I love all our episodes, but I'm a little biased, but that's a good one. So check that one out. It's coming out Thursday. And then Adrena, do you want to talk to everybody about yours?
Yep. So Voices of Impact releases every Wednesday, and tomorrow's episode is featuring Carissa and her daughter, Mila, actually, who's 12 years old, who decided that she wanted to start a nonprofit because of the mental health issues that she herself faced. So that is a really cool episode, completely different for me. I've never had a kiddo on the show before, but she's so I would say beyond her age and as far as like what she's wanting to achieve and the mission that she's on because of what she's been through. So it's a really cool episode. It's different for us, and hopefully I'll see a little bit of a different approach. I'm really honed in on what I'm trying to do with Voices of Impact in that I want to burst the bubbles that we all live in on a day-to-day basis, open our eyes to what's going on around us in our communities, and really inspire people to go out there and get involved. So this is the first episode with the restructure and the reformat. So I'd love to know, I guess, any feedback on how it feels to you guys, but really, again, encourage people to get out there, open their eyes to what's going on around them, and go get involved.
Yeah, your podcast has been super impactful. Even just for the you've had quite a few episodes now, but it's been really cool, kind of seeing and opening up our eyes to the world really that's out there. Like everybody, as expansive as we think our perception is, like the world's a big place, and the issues that we're all kind of facing together are big. So, and it's big. And we actually just had a conversation with was Steve on your last episode?
Yeah, he was released last week.
Yeah, last week. So we were actually talking to him about some cool projects I'm not allowed to talk about yet in other countries close to the U.S. And helping them kind of with their innovation and bringing the entrepreneurial spirit there. So we're very excited for some of the partnerships and stuff that we're able to start and have and create with Voices of Impact. So very, very cool. Very, very cool. But today, Founders Focus, we're going to keep it fairly similar vibe to what we've been doing. We have a case study. This case study is actually from one of our current clients, Carl at Carl Maverick Realty. I guess it's just Maverick Realty, not Carl Maverick Realty, and Jamu Capital. We actually just posted, if you want to be a real person, if you want to go look at our YouTube channel under client testimonials, he has Carl De La Cruz. You can kind of get firsthand account for some of the results that he's seen, tripling his revenue in about 4 or 5 months with what he's doing. But this was his words from when he first started with us in the case study for today, which was I transferred it from our onboarding Zoom call, most of it anyways, but I literally feel like I have no time. I know what I have to do, but I just most of the time get pulled in a million different directions between our short-term rental units, investment properties, and our course. I am losing my mind. And I can attest to that. He was losing his mind, but he kept it together. He was a composed loser of his mind. So I can appreciate that. I respect him. Right. We missed our goal the last 3 months as far as revenue for the short-term rentals. I'm not totally sure why. We are looking to add more units, but getting the furniture and everything else is getting quite a bit more expensive. So in other words, when he was acquiring new units, they were getting more and more expensive to furnish, decorate, appliances, this kind of stuff. So it kept getting more and more expensive, and it wasn't necessarily because of the market either, but we'll get into that. We can't keep missing our revenue goals much longer on the short-term rentals, so something needs to change. Well, let's talk about Carl a little bit behind his back. I mean, no, he can watch this all he wants. He knows we're doing it. No, but speaking in generalities, when we see a lot of these founders, business owners that come to, and again, he might be in a different industry. He's in real estate and short-term rentals and that kind of stuff. But this issue is very prevalent it doesn't matter what industry that you're in, where the founder is constantly in survival mode all the time. And they don't even know that they are. They think that they're pushing forward because they're doing more. But really, when we step back, and what we're going to focus on today is kind of that founder priority list and what the difference between day-to-day tasks and priorities are. And I think sometimes they get misconstrued. And there's a few other clients that we have that are pretty similar to that too. And again, a lot of them are, especially in this stage of business, where they're kind of that solopreneur looking to kind of grow from there, where they think they need to do everything. And because they're busy, they think they're getting ahead. Right? Do you have anything to add to that?
I think it's just being aware that when you're in that phase, you might want to solve a million different problems and you might want to try to make a difference in a million different ways. But I think that, again, like what we said about getting really clear about what your priority is and where you're going to be the most impactful initially is what can be missed a lot of times, because founders are the visionaries. Typically, they're the ones that are like, I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. I want to do all of the things all of the time. But that actually is going to stunt the growth and the opportunities that you have if you don't get really clear and aligned. And I think that's kind of what we saw with Carl, like wanting to juggle a course, juggle the rentals, and everything else that he had going on.
Yeah, they think if you do more, you're going to get more. When really you do more, you're just doing more. That's really it. Yeah. And with Carl, I mean, he's so, and a lot of these founders, and we just actually talked to one today, who they think because they're like, I hustle, I work hard, I listen to David Goggins every morning and Jocko, and I'm the hardest worker in the room, sort of thing. That's great. That's awesome. Some of the most successful people are lazy as shit, and it's not because they're lazy, like they don't work. It's because they find a way to be as efficient as possible. And a lot of people fall back on, that strength of, I can work hard. I'll work all hours. I'm not going to leave the office until, we turn a profit. I'm not blah, 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 all these great things. And they sound great. And it probably makes them feel good when they're talking about it. However, when they do that, but also then they also say that this is my vision. I want to have, the most short-term rentals in the province, or I want to be acquired by Nike, or I want all these types of things. Your actions are not aligned with that. You can't just, there's not enough hours in the day. You can't move fast enough as one person or even two people to achieve those things. Your actions are not in line with the goal that you want. So with Carl, we really had to look at what his priorities were, right? So we'll talk through how his priority list, again, we're focusing on priorities today. We're going to kind of walk through how his priority list sort of changed. So initially when we started working with him, this was a list of his priorities. This was his list. Creating the realty course and servicing the clients that he does have that are going through the program, overseeing short-term rental properties and tenants. So he was doing all the problem solving, answering questions, customer service, all this kind of stuff, right? And then obviously he was, for his long-term rentals too, he was dealing with long-term rentals as well, tenants, acquiring the furnishing and prepping new short-term rental properties. So at this time he was looking to add 2 or 3 more units. So he had to get all the furnishing, prepping the units, coordinating the cleaning crews, right? And again, like I said, he's managing the customer service lines for the short-term rental tenants. And then he's also managing his long-term rental properties. So when we looked at this, we were thinking, okay, what are these priorities are getting him closer to his goal, and which ones are holding him back, right? So if we look at like the first list, when he was doing the course, that was really the first thing where we were like, okay, so your goal is to have this many short-term rentals, is to take over the short-term rental kind of market, so to speak, there, and to build your own portfolio. What are you doing with this course, man? It doesn't really, add to it. He's like, well, I had some friends who, they knew I was really good at this stuff and they really wanted to learn from me. So I just made a course. And then, then I was like, oh, I could probably make money doing this. He's a big Alex Hormozy fan. So we like doing that kind of stuff. He wanted to put programs out there and, coach people and that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, so where you're at, is this helping you get closer to your goal, your current goal, which is the short-term rental properties in your own portfolio, or is it getting further away? He's just like, well, this is a lot of work. And then you always, like, because it's something you're passionate about, you're so good at justifying it. Like, we are such good salespeople at selling ourselves on doing shit we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
You just like really wholeheartedly agreed with me. I felt that.
I did. No, because it's so true. Like if we are passionate about something, we will find a way to make it make sense for us in that moment. In
Mhm.
so many different aspects, like even outside of business, which I know we're not here to
Mhm.
talk about today, but like we are so good at justifying things and selling ourselves on things, even because we're passionate about it, not necessarily because they're going to be the most impactful and actually help move us towards the
Yeah.
goals that we have for our business. So I think a lot of times that's where it can be really helpful to get an outside perspective who's not as passionate about like the main thing. They're passionate about your success, but they're going to
Mhm.
give you a different lens to look at it through. Which is, I mean, always what we're doing with our clients and we're working with them is just giving them the outside perspective to really do a gut check and see if the priorities that they have are actually in line with the direction that they're wanting to move in.
Yeah. Well, we also, yeah, no, I 1,000% agree. And one of the biggest, probably the best, one of the best superpowers like a founder can have, and somebody who wants, long-term success and wants to keep growing and achieve amazing things, is being open-minded, right? Like
Mhm.
understanding the fact that what my decisions have been and my perspective might be wrong. Right.
Yeah.
So we get so like, no, this is the way I'm gonna start this course. I'm gonna bring in other realtors. These realtors are gonna work for me, and then blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. I was like, okay, well, right now you're not even gonna get to that point if you keep focusing on this. So, but they're so, I don't want to admit that I'm wrong. I don't want to admit that the path I'm taking isn't the one that's going to get me success. So you stick with it. And it's not like, Carl's an amazing human being, and there's lots of amazing human beings. It's that have an ego, right? Just because you have an ego doesn't make you a bad person. It's just sometimes our ego gets in the way. We don't want to be wrong, or we so bad want to be. We want to, we want to do this thing, or we want, we saw, I saw Alex Hormozy and he looks like he lives a really cool life, or whoever else. I want to do what they're doing, and that's not even in line with the goal, right? So is the goal wrong, or is the things that you're doing wrong right now? And anyways, and having that open mind allows you to answer that honestly, right? So we had to have that honest conversation with them to start, which is like, okay, let's align your goals, right? Where do you want to go right now? And it was, okay, I want to take over the rental properties, the short-term rental properties, and increase my own portfolio. Okay, so right now we need capital, right? You're bleeding money right now on these short-term rentals, right? Your processes and systems are not in place, right? So we need to adjust your priorities. So here's the goal. Here's what you're doing now. That's not in line. Let's adjust what you're doing now and then work backwards, right? Yeah. So his new priority list was documenting your systems and processes, right? He was sourcing an assistant to take over administrative tasks, and we were using a portion of our talent density, a very small portion of our talent density framework, to help him source an assistant, just to take over some of those. Again, we identified a lot of these things that he was doing that he shouldn't have been doing himself. It's not that he shouldn't have been doing it, is that he didn't need to. It was something that he could have easily documented, turned into a training, made it a process, systematized it, onboarded somebody, taught them how to do it in a short-ish period of time, right? Yeah. And then you're off to the races. But a lot of people don't want to sacrifice that short term, right? And like with Carl, it was always like, well, something would come on my desk, and I just knew that I could just do it, so I did it.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, in that moment you could have done it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I think that's one of the hardest parts. I think with a lot of times with founders, it's like we want to just have such a tight hold on everything, even though it's not the thing that's actively going to move us in the direction that we need to. So to be able to recognize that it might take a little bit of time to put a process in place or create a training, but it will pay off tenfold, 20-fold, 30-fold when you free up your time and then can actually focus on the things that are high value for you. Whereas you continue to do some of the tasks, again, they're so easy to pass off. It might take you 30 minutes, it might take you an hour. If you really sit and do it, then you can move on with your life, hand it over to somebody who's more than capable of doing it, and potentially find ways to do it even more efficiently because they're going to get so good at it. And then you're able to free up your time. So that's a fun one to break through, but once you get there and you do it, it feels so good because then their eyes kind of open up and it's like, oh, I'm not spending time that I don't need to spend on things, and I can now shift and focus on what's important.
Yeah. I know I had to learn that the hard way. So when I had my first business, it was a fitness and wellness facility, and we were running classes. It was based on classes, and I was so nervous to have somebody else run the classes for my clients, for our customers, that I just couldn't. It was so hard for me to pass that baton on. But and I realized it wasn't because I didn't want to pass the baton on. It wasn't necessarily because I knew I couldn't trust anybody or something like that. It's that I wasn't comfortable or wasn't confident in my ability to set up a new coach for success, to do things the way we needed it. So that was tough because we had 7 classes a day. So it's 7 hours of coaching plus my own training. I was a professional athlete at the same time. Plus I had to do the marketing, the books, all this kind of stuff. And the strategic partnerships that we had, I was trying to keep those alive and all that kind of stuff. And there was just no time. I was getting sick. I wasn't training right. My performance was lacking and everything. I was like, okay, I just gotta do it. And like in one night, it was so silly. In one night, I wrote up like how to run a class, like how we want to run our class. Had somebody I already knew that could teach. They've taught before, right? And then brought them in, and they took over the morning classes. So there's 6, 7, 9:15 and noon. So they took over 4 classes for me. That freed up so much. Like that's so much.
Yeah.
That is so much time. That is 20 hours a week. That, well, no, it was realistic. They didn't do all those classes right away, but either way, to start, it was like 8 hours a week, which is a lot. Which was a ton. Like that was our marketing, that was our books, that was my own recovery, right? And then where I was able to add from there. And that was like the biggest thing, is setting yourself up to delegate. And a lot of times it seems tough because they're like, okay, I'm sacrificing getting these things done right now so I can
Yeah.
do this thing that I've never done before, so I have no proof that it works. So I get it, it's tough, but it doesn't take as long as you think it does, right? If it doesn't work out the first time, it's fine. You're allowed to fail. You're allowed, just have those, those structures in place to mitigate, the backlash of if you hire somebody and it doesn't work out. Like, give yourself, draw that line in the sand. Okay, if I feel like they're not ready in 2 weeks, I need to adjust my expectations, or I need to adjust how I onboarded them, or I didn't hire the right person. How do I find the right person now? That kind of thing. Like, it's okay as long as you can fail. Just make sure you fail well.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the biggest thing. Don't put all your eggs in this basket. Leave them alone with your clients, or leave them alone, dealing with your tenants and that kind of stuff, and then just run away. Do the work, right? And again, it doesn't take as long as you think. If you can record your screen, go through the buttons that you need to press, talk into a camera for a little bit, right? And then you'll be surprised, right? Especially if you pick the right person, or even pick, half the right person, right? And you have set them up for success. At least have something to build off of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what we did with them. So we documented those systems and processes to start, and sourcing that assistant administrative to take over the administrative tasks was really what were those administrative tasks? What does this person need to accomplish? Let's create specifications for who we need to look for. And then now that we know who we need to look for, we can kind of be more easily and more pointed, find out where to find them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we developed a midterm strategy to increase the profitability of the short-term rentals. So we were looking at why weren't they as profitable as they could be? Where was the money bleeding? Why were the rates the way they were? Why would people pick other options over yours? And there's all these kinds of stuff, right? And then getting feedback. The biggest thing in doing so was to get feedback from the tenants and possible improvements and areas of strength to leverage. So why did you pick us? Would you pick us again? And if so, why would you? Okay, those are our strengths. Let's make sure that we find ways to highlight those, leverage those to increase the perceived value. And then what isn't going well, let's either improve upon those, or let's find ways to just avoid them. Right. Most of the time in this case, in this type of industry, it's okay, your doors are falling off and you're in the short-term rental. Okay, fix that. Right. And find ways to improve upon those weaknesses. And that was one thing that you said, was, okay, they're constantly putting out fires all the time. That's one thing that a lot of founders do in this stage, is they go to solve the problem. They solve it once. Well, the problem keeps coming up. You have to solve problems twice. I know that sounds super inefficient. Solve it once, solve the immediate issue, solve the immediate problem, and then come back and solve for the reason that it happened in the first place. And a lot of founders, when they're in this stage, the busy stage, right, they're running in circles on a hamster wheel stage, they don't come back and do it a second time. So it just constantly happens, right? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to figure out what that means to come back and fix it that second time. And then once we got this accomplished, go ahead. Were you gonna say add to that?
I was just gonna say, we always had a rule of thumb too in the past, and still would hold true to it now, is like, if a major issue occurs, like you just said, that twice is really the key to then setting you up to not have the same issue again. So we kind of always held ourselves at a mark of, okay, this is the issue, this is what we think will solve it. If it happens more than 2 times, we've done something wrong. So what did we miss in that process, and how can we make sure that this does not happen again? And then you can start to build in your little fail safes, and making sure that you're set up to maybe catch the problem before it becomes as big as it did before, to kind of ring the alarm bells a little bit along the way too. And I think that is something that will help you from having huge fires to put out in the long run.
Yeah. One of the probably the most common, in this case, most common things that we hear from our clients and founders is, oh, that just always happens, or that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Oh, we always, every Friday I have to go and fix this. It's like, okay, well, you're part of the problem, right? Like, you're literally facilitating this issue to reoccur. So, but once we kind of accomplished this priority list, there was a new priority list. So this is the newer list of priorities. So from there, now that we have everything documented, we turn the documented systems and processes into hiring and trainings for the new hires. We did find a new assistant, and we onboarded her. Her name's Tatiana. She's amazing. I think he references her in that testimonial, and gained feedback from them. If you hire the right person, they have some experience, you can get feedback from them, right? Here's the processes. Here's the trainings. Give us feedback. What doesn't make sense? What does make sense? How confident do you feel right now? if I was to leave for a month right now, do you think you could handle it? Right? Don't do that, but it's a question to ask. Get feedback from them, right? And we did, and Tatiana was amazing about it. And then decrease. We found out that one of the places that they were really bleeding money was that they were spending way too much money on furnishing and decorating and decking out their short-term rentals. And it was
One thing
because
that oh, go ahead.
no, and the reason that he was is because he was so busy that he would just basically send a company a blank check and then they would furnish the apartment. He didn't, take the time. He wasn't able to take the time, to negotiate, to find better deals, to find a better process to furnish these places with good quality stuff while also keeping his prices down. Right.
Yeah.
So go ahead. You were going to say something.
I was going to say in regards to that one specifically, because that obviously plays hugely into the ROI that they get after they've got it listed, is we actually challenge them. And Zach, I think it was your idea, challenge them to set a very, very low, like much lower budget than what they were used to. They're still going for quality. They still make sure that everything that they put in these homes is of good quality, but you challenge them to come in, I think was it like $3 to $5 grand underneath what they were doing it for. And then it's like, okay, if you don't hit that mark dead on, at least you're down $3 grand or $2 grand, whatever it might be. And I think that that's a really cool way to do things too, is like set yourself those challenges of something that might feel a little bit unrealistic, but then see how close you can get to it. And now you're that much better off in the future.
Yeah, and you want to be careful not to do that with some stuff, but in this case for sure that was fun. Yeah, I forgot that we did that. It was, and again, this is because the hire, Tatiana, was amazing. Like it was a really good hire. We were really careful who we were looking for, what they needed to be able to accomplish, and that kind of stuff. So the hire was really, really good, and the onboardings, obviously, and the trainings and everything were really good. She was actually ended up being at the offsite that we did with them, so she was ingrained in the culture at that point as well. But you challenge them if you trust them, right? Give them a challenge them. Okay, I trust you. Here's the budget. Make an amazing, right? Like make the place amazing with this budget, right? And be creative. Do your thing. All right. Like we'll check in with you, but this is yours. You give them ownership of it, right? And that's what we did, and it ended up working, right? And then from there they were kind of like, okay, how can we turn that into a process, right? How can we make this so that every unit that we have, okay, here's a process, and then how can we, whether it's, and we'll talk about this in a second, but like strategic partnerships and this kind of stuff, is it buying in bulk and all that kind of stuff. But then the next thing they did was execute on the feedback from past tenants to increase perceived value. So they got some pretty good feedback actually on how they could make their properties a little bit more, increase the perceived value and make their stay a little bit more comfortable and make them want to pick theirs over others and that kind of stuff. But it was to execute on it, because getting feedback is useless unless you execute on it. And he did beautifully, absolutely beautifully. And then the newest list of priorities. So basically, one of the things we want to highlight here is your priorities, especially not always, right? But in this type of business, things were moving quicker. It was a smaller business, so things change a lot. So his priorities, his list of priorities changed. The things that he needed to accomplish in the short term changed often, right? But they're always correlated with the long-term goal that we set. Yeah. So from here, he delegated more and more tasks to the new hire, and he held them accountable with scheduled check-ins. So we worked on his leadership, his communication, how to take feedback, how to give feedback. And I think in a leadership position here, taking feedback is probably just as important as giving feedback, because if you can't take the feedback, you don't know how to adjust to give feedback more efficiently. So we worked on that a lot with him. And then from there is developing partnerships with local furniture stores to keep costs down and develop local relationships. So they actually found that they could, if they bought in bulk for 2 or 3 properties at a time, right, they would keep their costs down. So they created a process around that. And if you go to each of their units, they look the same now. They look very similar. So they're buying a lot of similar things, which is fine, because who cares if all your properties look different when people are there for a weekend or like a week, right, at a time, right? It doesn't matter if all your units look the same, because they're only going to be in one, right? And that's totally fine. It keeps costs down, keeps things consistent. And again, it's a process. So when you scale, it's much more manageable, right? So that was a big thing they did. He hired a VA to handle customer service line for 16 hours a week. Again, he didn't start out with a full-time VA to pay them full-time. I think he started out about 10 hours a week. and then moved it up to 8 hours a week. But that just similar to me hiring the coach, I think it took away about 3 or 4 hours a day for a week, like 3 or 4 hours a day within the week, for him to focus on other things, for him to be able to focus on creating those partnerships, getting the feedback from, reaching out to tenants, past tenants to get the feedback, and working with the cleaning crews and these kind of things, the higher value tasks for him, and working on the properties, acquiring new properties, and all this kind of stuff, the marketing. So he was able to just have more bandwidth too, not to feel like he's running around all the time. He can make better decisions. He can be more creative. And so that helped him a lot. He actually ended up being able to run a marathon or a half marathon. He did a half marathon. He did a half marathon. Yeah, he was training. So he had time to go train for a half marathon and move into a new house with his fiance, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So because of all that, because of the decreased time that he had to spend in the business, the increased bandwidth, he can make better decisions. He was in a better mood. He was healthier. So it was just he executed well, right? I don't want to take any credit for it. Carl executed perfectly on all these things. And then from there, he used one of the other things he was doing is we used the referrals that we were gaining from people, because we executed on all the improvements. Those people that loved the improvements, we got more referrals for them. So we were getting more referrals. We were getting more marketing materials that we could use in the marketing to increase the perceived value. And then he was able to increase rates while keeping his the time that people were renting his spaces the same or increasing them. So that was the big thing: increase rates and more time, and more time being rented in his short-term rentals. So that was really the big things that contributed to him going from about $22K per month in revenue to, after about 4 months of implementing all these things, $60K per month in revenue. And that did also a little over double from last year's, I believe this was June or July, where they hit 60K. July, they might have hit 70. But June, I know they were in the 60s, or they're at 60. But the year before that, I think they were still only around 25. So even if you can compare months to months, they're still well over doubling their revenue. And again, it was simple for us as from an outside perspective. It's probably simple to you looking at this now as we're kind of explaining it. But when you're in the business, it's not. You're blinded by the busy. You're blinded by the tasks that I got to do right now. You're blinded by surviving. Right. And you need to take yourself, what's that? You need to see the forest for the trees, or the trees for the forest. I can't remember how that saying goes. But
I never remember that one either.
Yeah. But again, it seems simple. It seems simple, and it is. But again, that goes back to we want to make business simple so that you can live extraordinary, because it can be. You got to pull yourself out of that initial trap, that hamster wheel that you put yourself in. And is your list of priorities just a list of tasks that you're doing to keep the business surviving and keep yourself surviving? Or is it a list of priorities that's pushing your business forward to where you want it to go to achieve the goal that you set it to achieve to begin with? And that's a big question that you got to answer. That was me dropping the mic. But I think that's it. We kept it at 33 minutes. I think that was good.
Go team.
Go team. Beautiful. But anyways, we really appreciate everybody hanging out. We saw a lot of numbers in here. We didn't give you a lot of opportunity to kind of get involved in that kind of stuff. But going forward, we're going to make these a little bit more structured. This is one that we wanted to highlight. Somebody who found a lot of success recently is one of our clients. And then we have many more that we can share with you as well, which we will. But we really appreciate everybody. So remember that we have on Thursday, we have our Summit Success Series this week, where we're going to be kind of rounding out some of our talent density framework that we've been talking about the rest of the month. Last week that we had Junaid Iqbal on the show, it was incredible, really, really good show, a lot of engagement, so he's a recruiter. He owns nodegree.com recruiting, and he also I found out that he's taken a break from his podcast, but he's also the host of the No Degree podcast. He's amazing at recruiting. He's amazing at seeing talent outside of just the degree, hence the nodegree.com label for his business. But it was a really, really good show. Go back to our YouTube channel, Summit Chasers Productions, and check out that episode. And then the week before that, we had Joe Ortiz, our very own. He's our internal recruiting and talent density coach. So we were going over recruiting. We were going over identifying your ideal candidate and how to find them, where to find them. So a lot of good stuff. So we're going to kind of round that out on Thursday. this week at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're very excited for it. Very excited for all the shows that we have going forward. So you can keep up to date with those. Sign up for our newsletter. We'll put those in the comments below after we get off here. But we really appreciate everybody. And Adrena, do you have anything to add?
Keep chasing your next summit.
She did it.
From you.
How dare you? All right, you take care, everybody.